Thank you, Sam and Lucy. So my talk title this morning is Beyond Our Grasp. You may not have heard the news, but this week a statue was unveiled in downtown St. Augustine for Frederick Douglass. And I thought that was curious. I was interested in that. I had seen a plaque. There is a plaque downtown where he actually spoke. And that's the reason the statue was installed. And I think it's important that we remember him, remember that he came to the city and spoke. And it matters because our memory shapes our consciousness. And it matters because when we remember a person like Frederick Douglass, we remember someone who believed in the promise of our nation. And it helps us answer questions about ourselves, about what do we want to become as a nation and as a people. Frederick Douglass, he was born into slavery in 1818. He was denied education. He was denied dignity, legal identity. And yet he became one of the most eloquent speakers for freedom that the world has ever produced. He once said, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Now that's not just political, it's also metaphysical. Because in New Thought, we recognize that evolution, that our consciousness evolves through contrast. The seed pushes against the soil. The butterfly has to push against its shell. Growth is not the absence of struggle, it's born from it. And Douglass, he understood that because that was indeed his life. So he came to St. Augustine in 1889. The Civil War had ended just 24 years before. Slavery had been abolished just 24 years before. The war was over, but there were still great struggles. The constitutional amendments had been put in place, and on paper, freedom had been guaranteed, but not in reality. Reconstruction was collapsing, and southern states were rolling back freedoms as fast as they could. Violence and intimidation were rising up. The seeds of Jim Crow were being planted. The last African-American congressman would leave the Congress in 1901. Not another African-American voice would be heard in our Congress until 1973, 72 years later. And the person that came to speak was Barbara Jordan. If you don't know about her, look her up. She was an amazing woman. Now, Douglass did not come to St. Augustine to celebrate a finished dream. He came here because he knew that dream was in danger. And so he talked about the necessity of voting rights, the importance of education, the dignity of self-determination, the fragility of freedom itself. He warned that emancipation without participation could be reversed. And indeed it was. He was already seeing the erosion of the very progress he had fought for, but he kept traveling, he kept speaking, he kept reaching out. And when he arrived here in St. Augustine in 1889, horses were still drawing carriages over sandy streets. The grand hotels had been built and northern visitors were coming down. Palm trees were swaying in the humid breeze, but they carried the memory of Spanish rule, and the scars of the Civil War were still fresh. In one part of our town, there were northern tourists coming down. In another part, freed African-American families were building churches, schools, and businesses. Hope and hostility lived side by side. And into that tension came Frederick Douglass. He chose to come here. He was a formerly enslaved person, now a statesman. He was on his way to become U.S. Minister to Haiti. And he was one of the most recognized leaders in the world. Some here in our city would welcome him as a hero. Others would see him as a threat. But he chose to speak not with bitterness, but with clarity. He had seen bondage, he had seen freedom, he had seen progress, he had seen backlash. And he knew something that is important for us to remember. Freedom is not a moment, it is a movement. He didn't live to see the civil rights movement, the end of segregation. He didn't live to see black officials elected across the nation. The slow bending of the moral arc. He once said, "I have seen dark hours in my life. I have seen bright ones. I've seen both bondage and freedom." But he did not get to see the fulfillment of everything he had hoped for. And that brings us to something that is spiritually profound. Sometimes not achieving our dreams in our lifetime can be a great value. In mythology, over and over again, we're taught about the hero or the heroine who goes off and she conquers the world and she gets what she wants, her greatest desires. But then when she brings them back to the world, the pot of gold has turned into a pot of ash. And you see that throughout history. I heard a story about Lucille Ball. You know, Lucille Ball, she was a brilliant businesswoman, who's primarily what she was. She wasn't a comedian at all. They said she almost had no sense of humor. Yeah, surprisingly. She purposely designed the I Love Lucy show to keep her husband. She dearly loved Ricky, and she was desperate to have something that kept him from wandering around. And so yes, it didn't work, by the way. And she created the show. It was a phenomenon. It was huge. She was the first woman to own a major studio. The first woman. She was a brilliant person. She green-lighted the Mission Impossible. She green-lighted Star Trek. She broke huge grounds. But in all of that success, she lost the thing she wanted most, which was her relationship with her husband. Sometimes it's the journey, it's the struggle that gives us purpose and meaning. In New Thought, we affirm, we vision, we declare, ask and you'll receive. And yes, Spirit does respond. But there's something sacred about the unfinished goal, about the unfinished dream. Robert Browning, he wrote, "A man's reach should exceed his grasp, or else what is heaven for?" If we could grasp everything we reach for, if justice was instantly attainable, if growth was complete, there would be no evolution. There would be no becoming. In the Hindu text, it says, "Arise, awake, and do not stop until the goal is reached." Don't stop. And what if the end point is not fixed? What if there's forever evolving, forever expanding? And what if the goal is expansion itself, is growth itself? Holmes, the founder of our teaching, he says the whole evolutionary process is one of awakening. Awakening to what? Awakening to the glory of your soul. Awakening to how valuable and important you are, how needed and necessary you are. Awakening to the love of Spirit within you. Within you. Now, it's not instant perfection. It's the awakening. New Thought, we often focus on individual manifestation. But there's also collective manifestations. Consciousness unfolding throughout the generations. Douglas reached beyond literacy, beyond escape, beyond ambition. He reached towards full human dignity. And he wasn't there to see it. but because he kept reaching, we live in a different world. Dr. King, he said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Long means that we are a part of something larger than personal fulfillment. And this is where it becomes personal. We have our dreams for our families, for our health, for our community, even for CSL St. Augustine. And there are moments when we give it our best effort. We don't see the results we hope for. And in those times, our ego will tell us you're a failure. But Spirit is forever whispering to us, evolve, keep going, keep trying. I had a friend one time said that even a kick in the rear can be a step in the right direction at times. Frederick Douglass, he says, it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. He was thinking of generationally, of what's coming. He was planting trees on whose shade he would never sit under. Spirit thinks in centuries. We think in calendars. And that brings me to something that I had to learn about not always being able to see the results you want to happen. When we lived in Atlanta, the first house we bought was in an Orthodox Jewish neighborhood. And we lived on a steep hill. And so it meant that our house, you could look down, you could see the roof of our neighbor. And it also meant that we could hear everything that went on in their house. And they were a very loud family. And they were Orthodox Jewish, and so they kept their distance, which was okay. But through the years, I began to have a very troubling feeling of what was going on in that house, because the mother, while she was lovely and friendly and nice in public, she was a tyrant behind those closed doors. And I could hear the abuse she heaped on those children. She had 3 girls, and I could just hear how dreadful she was to those 3 girls. And my office was right where I could hear this on a daily basis. And I wondered what to do. I knew I was not the person to go speak to her. I knew I wasn't even the person to go speak to the dad. And so for a long time, I just ignored it and thought, well, this isn't for me to do. But something kept rising up in me, that since I was there in that place, that it was for me to do, if I wanted to or not, if I felt comfortable about it or not. Dr. Holmes, he says, this kind of feeling, that's that inner intelligence moving us towards right action. So finally, I decided the thing I could do would be to call the school that the kids attended. They attended a Jewish school that was attached to the synagogue. And so I called anonymously. And I was really had hesitancy to do that, because the Orthodox community is very insular and they're not very welcoming. They like to keep their own private. And so I did not have any idea what kind of response I would get from the rabbi, but I just felt I had to say something. And so I called up the rabbi anonymously, and his response surprised me to my very core, because he was so grateful to me. And he told me, he says, I am so grateful, but it's a different word, not astonished, but just so thankful that you outside of our community would think so much about one of our children that you would step up and you would be willing to step out of your safety zone and be willing to try to protect these children. And then he said something that I really wasn't expecting. He said, you've opened a door. He says, now we've walked through it. He says, we pray for the highest good. And he said, God doesn't need our fears. God needs our willingness. Our willingness. He said, we've done our part. And he says, I'll do mine. He said that he had been aware of the situation and that they were trying to counsel as best they could. So he said, you've done your part, I'll do mine. And then we must trust in spirit. We turn it over to God. We're not here to solve every problem. It is God's universe after all. So we do what we can, and then we turn it over, and we allow the law to unfold. We release and then do the best we can with what's right in front of us, and trust that Spirit works beyond our sight, beyond even our lives. I don't know what happened in that household afterwards. But I had reached the part that I could do. I had moved past my comfort zone. And sometimes the reaching is the miracle. Frederick Douglass wasn't able to solve the problems of what was going on, but he showed up. We don't own the outcome, we own the reaching. Douglass didn't see full equality. I'm sure if you had gone up to him the day that he delivered that speech and you told him one day there's going to be a statue set up for you here on this spot, he would have doubled over with laughter. He would have never believed it. But because he walked, others ran. Because we stand, others will rise. And this is the arc that Dr. King was talking about. This is the reach. And perhaps the better question is not, will I see this dream accomplished, but will I be faithful to reaching it? Will I align with justice? Will I align with compassion? Will I help build stronger children? Am I planting trees that others will enjoy? Am I embodying the freedom I wish to see? So we can honor Frederick Douglass in our city, not merely admire him, but let's join with him. Let's dare to reach beyond our grasp. Let us accept that heaven is not a distant reward, but an everlasting unfoldment of our consciousness. Completion is not the measure of life, alignment is. And may our reach always exceed our grasp, because that reach is how heaven enters the world. It is how spirit is manifested in the physical, through your heart, through your soul, through your love, through your mind, through your willingness to step up and step out, for your willingness to speak up and speak out, to be the love of God made manifest where you are. It's the truth in your life this morning. It's the truth in mine, and so it is. Thank you. Thank you.